There's something out there. There's something or someone who holds the key to the truth in the Idaho 4 case. Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk a little bit about why I follow the Idaho 4 crimes so closely. Now, right after these crimes occurred, a friend of mine who works in law enforcement was telling me about some news about these 4 college students who had just lost their lives in this small town in Idaho. When I first heard the news about the Idaho 4 crimes, I remember thinking, like everyone else, how tragic that 4 young people lost their lives. I mean, I felt horrible for the victims as well as their families and friends. This was a tragedy. But I come from an area where there's a lot of violent crime. I believe that the area I live in, we are probably in the top 3 in the nation for violent crime. And not only violent crime, but violent crime against multiple victims. So as much as I felt like, this is a tragedy, I didn't really think too much about this case in the very beginning. When my friend first told me about it, of course it caught my interest, but I didn't think too much about it because I had seen these types of cases before. So one of the aspects that I was curious about, though, was the motivation as well as the weapons that may have been used to carry out these crimes. Because my interest is in why people commit the crimes that they do, the violent crimes that they commit. How do people cross that line and take other human beings' lives in a very violent way, as well as weaponry? So I have a lot of experience and knowledge about weaponry. So in my videos, when I'm talking about weapons and their capabilities and what they do and what they can't do, I'm not just guessing. I have experience with a lot of these different types of weaponry. So of course it piqued my interest about, what drove this person to do this or these people, because in the very beginning, I definitely believed that there were multiple attackers, and I still believe that now. But, I was interested in that aspect of it, and I was also interested in what weaponry was used to carry out these crimes. I decided to look into these crimes a little bit out of curiosity because to me it seemed pretty obvious that there were multiple attackers who carried this out. I would say at least 2. Maybe people who had a violent past. This seemed very personal. Somebody with an axe to grind. This seemed like someone who was possibly getting revenge. It appeared to be not only personal, but almost emotionally driven. It's not every day that somebody takes the life of 4 people with a knife. So, in my opinion, when I first started following these crimes, I believed that this was possibly someone who maybe started out with being cruel to animals and maybe had moved up to taking the lives of humans. It didn't appear to be a crime that somebody who had no history of violence would commit. This would obviously be someone who was comfortable using a knife to cut flesh, whether it be an animal or something greater than that. But someone who was comfortable using a knife to do this, because not everyone has the capability to use a knife to cut flesh. Not everybody has the capability to get that close to their victims because it's very personal. So in my opinion, when I first started researching these crimes, I believed that it was definitely personal, carried out, with a lot of emotion. And I believed that there were multiple perpetrators who carried out this crime and would be individuals who had a violent past. Not someone who this was just their first time. In my opinion, a quadruple homicide indicated that whoever committed these crimes probably had a serious history of violence. I've said from the very beginning that I'll never believe that one individual committed these crimes. And I'll never believe that one weapon was used to take the lives of all 4 victims. Kathy Mabbitt, the coroner, she stated that they would not be able to determine the order in which these victims' lives were taken. But if only one weapon was used throughout these crimes, there's a good chance that they would be able to determine the order, through blood transfer. So basically, the second victim would have body fluid from the first victim inside their body if the same weapon was used. So, and then the third victim would have body fluid from the second and first victim, and so on. So there would be blood transfer if the same weapon was used. Do I think it's possible that Bryan Kohberger carried out these crimes by himself? Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are possible. I think that if he had trained with sharp-edged blades and knew how to use them and did a little research, maybe knew the layout of the house as well as the area around the crime scene, the neighborhood, then I think that I think it would be possible. But I do believe that it would have to be something that was planned out. In my opinion, if Bryan Kohberger committed these crimes by himself, he would have had to have a plan rather than, the idea that it was blind rage. Because you can't really have both. You can't really have a well planned out crime and then also have that same crime that was carried out because of blind rage. That would be 2 different motivations. Maybe if they planned it all out, it was out of revenge or it was for personal reasons. But if it was blind rage, it would be more that someone just flew off the handle, and there would be chances that, the chances are that it wouldn't have been a well planned out crime. So in my opinion, you can't really have both. You can't have well planned out as well as blind rage. It kind of has to be one or the other, because nobody's going to plan to be in a blind rage at the perfect time to commit these crimes. Now, if these crimes were planned out, then that would bring some of the evidence into question. Because if Bryan Kohberger went into this house and took the lives of 4 healthy young people, one being a 6-foot+ male who was strong and healthy, and did it all with a knife, and then just walked out the sliding glass door and disappeared into the night without any injuries, then this crime would have had to be, in my opinion, very well planned out. So if it was well planned out, why would Bryan Kohberger drive his own vehicle directly to the crime scene. I mean, it's very possible that, maybe Brian Kohberger did not know how to steal a vehicle, which would be the common, way to do this. Most criminals that are going to carry out this type of crime are not going to take their own car. They're going to steal a car. Or he could have also simply parked in the neighborhood behind the King Roadhouse and just walked through the tree line to get to the house, rather than drive his car all around the area, drawing attention to himself. That just wouldn't make sense. And it seems as though if Brian Kohberger did meticulously plan this out, that he would have thought about this. Transportation would have been a huge part of his plan. How are you going to get in and out without tying yourself to the crime? Something else that caught my attention right away was when they released the news about the K-bar knife sheath, because that seems strange to me. Why would you walk into a crime scene that you've planned this out, but you're going to take the accessory to a weapon that has the name advertised all over the front of this sheath? So when law enforcement found this sheath, they knew exactly what the weapon was, because it's plastered all over the front of the sheath. In big letters, it says K-bar. So most sheaths are made of just plain leather or other materials. So law enforcement wouldn't know. They would know that it was a sharp-edged blade, but they wouldn't know the make or the type of weapon that it was. So with this knife sheath that was found on Maddie's bed, law enforcement knew immediately when they found it what type of knife this was. So it seems as though Brian Kohberger, with his education, would know better than to take an accessory into the crime scene that basically lets law enforcement know exactly the weapon that was used to carry out these crimes. It just seems odd. When I first heard about the sheath and found out that, it said K-bar USMC on the front of this sheath, that didn't make sense to me, because it seems as though Brian Kohberger would have known better than that, especially if this was a crime that he had planned out. Why would this attacker give investigators everything that they need? I mean, the sheath basically told them what the weapon was and the type of weapon that was used. They automatically knew when they saw it that was a K-bar. I mean, when you first saw a picture of this sheath, is that not the first thing you noticed? That it was a K-bar? And I feel like that's something that Brian Kohberger would have also noticed. So I've always thought that the K-bar sheath was a rather odd thing to leave in the crime scene, because basically, it advertises exactly what weapon was used. What caught my attention immediately when I started to look into these crimes was that the roommates who were alive in the house during the time of these crimes, while these crimes were occurring, didn't call 911 for 8 hours. And I feel like that's one of the aspects of this crime that's drawn a lot of us, to want to know more about these crimes. And that's when I really started to kind of dig deep into this case, because to me, that just simply didn't make sense. And then as I looked into it more and more and started to do more research, less and less began to add up. It made sense that they didn't have all the answers, because this was in the very beginning of the investigation. But as I was researching, these pieces didn't fit together from the very beginning. These pieces didn't fit together from day one, and that's kind of what captivated me, and that's when I really started to dive into this case, because in my opinion, these crimes appear to be committed out of anger. They seem very personal, very emotional. Someone who wanted to cause a lot of damage. But then on the other hand, they're being described by investigators as basically well planned out. That one individual carried out their plan. But as I said before, you can't really have both. You can't really have the blind rage and the well planned out. Because no matter how well you're planned out, you're not going to be able to plan to be in a blind rage. So that was kind of what confused me, because the crime scene itself and the descriptions of the injuries to the victims sounded like anger, blind rage. The coroner, Kathy Mabbitt, said, whoever committed these crimes must have been very angry. But then investigators are explaining it more like it was a well-planned out crime, which it probably would have needed. It would have needed to be a well-planned out crime if one individual, Bryan Kohberger, committed these crimes and walked out of that house after taking the life of 4 individuals without any injuries or leaving any type of solid, significant evidence that he was actually physically inside this house. So as I've looked into these crimes, and now, I've been researching these crimes for almost 2 years. I still haven't been able to find a motivation, still haven't been able to find a connection between this suspect and these victims. As I said, to me, these crimes were either committed out of blind rage or they were methodical and well planned out. So all of this time, I've been looking for this connection. After Bryan Kohberger was arrested, I immediately began trying to find a connection between Bryan Kohberger and these victims or this house. And, because that's what I'm looking for. I think a lot of us are looking for this connection, because like I said, I do believe that it is possible that Bryan Kohberger could have committed these crimes. But that is what has captivated me about this case, is that a lot of the pieces don't fit together. And as much research as I've done, I have picked this case apart with tweezers, and as much research as I've done, I have not been able to find that connection between these crimes and Bryan Kohberger. I'm not saying that it's not out there. There's something or someone out there who knows what happened. There's something that would indicate that this is what happened. There's someone who knows, or holds the key to the truth in these Idaho 4 crimes. And I think that myself, as well as a lot of other content creators who are investigating this case and diving into this case, I feel like that's what a lot of us are looking for. We're looking for that answer that says, here it is. This is why Bryan Kohberger is sitting in that defendant's chair. Because as I've always said, there's a reason that he's sitting there. There's something in a photo, in a video, in an interview. Those answers are there. And that's what I think a lot of us are continuing to look for. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it. And if you liked my video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. As I said, I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.